Okay, I think I will go ahead and get us started. So welcome colleagues and thank you for joining us for this webinar, which is focusing on international students' perspectives on activism and free speech. If you are joining us for the first time, although I see a lot of familiar names, this is led by the Research with International Students Network, which is a network of scholars who all include international students as participants or co-researchers within their work. And our intention is to create a more critical perspective on the research fields. We've been doing a series of webinars now, which I believe this is our fifth webinar, which is all focusing on polycrisis and research with international students. This is the second session that we've done that has to do with free speech and international students, this one looking specifically on international students' perspectives. We do have another 5 sessions in our webinar series after this one, so I will put a link into the chat in a moment if you'd like to take a look at the sessions that we have upcoming. But I'm going to hand over to the lead organizer of this session, which is Shanshan Jiang-Brittan. She's having some trouble with her camera, so apologies in advance that you will hear her, but might not be able to see her at the moment until she gets this sorted. But I'll just go ahead and hand over to Shanshan. So over to you.
Thank you, Jenna, for the great introduction, and apologies everyone for not having a working camera. I'll get that fixed during transition period. So welcome everyone. My name is Shanshan Jiang-Brittan from the University of California, Berkeley. It's my great pleasure to facilitate this panel. We are here to explore a very timely and deeply nuanced topic, and that is international students' perspective on activism and free speech. As we navigate what scholars increasingly describe, and Jenna also used the term polycrisis, a convergence of intensifying geopolitical tensions, shifting nationalism, and the heightened precarity of migration, the traditional narratives surrounding international student mobility are being profoundly challenged in an era where the global campus is no longer a neutral space, but a site of intense political contestation. The agency of international students have moved from the periphery of scholarly debate to its very center. And this panel is particularly timely as it seeks to peel back the layers of how international students in different geographic contexts navigate these complexities in real time. This panel also acknowledges that student life is no longer lived in a single dimension. By investigating both physical spaces, such as on campus, activism and in-person civic engagement, as well as digital spaces where effective storytelling and social media platforms become vital hubs for solidarity, we gain a deeper understanding of the modern international student experience. This also allows us to see how students negotiate their identities and political voices when their physical presence might be under surveillance of their digital footprint carries immense risk. Ultimately, these studies move beyond treating international students as mere economic subjects, instead recognizing them as active agents who are situated within a complex web of power relations, but also who are constantly recalibrating their political participation across national borders. So each presenter will have 20 minutes today, and then we'll reserve the final portion of our session for a collective Q&A and discussion. Without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Yvonne Zhang.
Thank you. Can everybody see my slides okay? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I'll get. So hi everyone, my name is Yvonne Zhang and I am a PhD student from Faculty of Education in McGill University. Today I will talking about my research project called Relatively Speaking, Students Have Freedom in Political Participation, Chinese International Students' Perception and Experience of Political Participation in Canada. So before this presentation starts, I want to do a land acknowledgement that this research was conducted in McGill University and is located on the land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst indigenous peoples, including Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. McGill honors, recognize, and respects these nations as a traditional stewards of the land and the waters on which we meet today. But I want to highlight that doing a land acknowledgement is not enough to addressing the harm that caused by settler colonialism. So today I want to invite you to join me with the ongoing reflection on how the settler colonialism plays out in the space of research with international students. So when we're starting talking about political participation in Canadian higher education setting, we need to know, like in Canada, in the recent years, the political participation among secondary students has continued increase. As you can see, some of the headlines on the right-hand side, it shows that students engaging in on-campus activism to addressing like geopolitical crisis in the international context, or responding the higher education policy changes. And among these student groups, international students are also actively participating in these political activities. However, in the previous research showed the students are often receiving the disencouragement from the university administrations, especially within international student groups. So since this project is focusing on Chinese international students, I want to kind of introduce how Chinese international students are positioned in Canadian higher education setting. They are the second largest international student group in Canadian higher education. However, there are many like problematic and stereotypical views over this on these student groups, such as lack of critical thinking skills, always having this low political interest or participation rate, which is shaped by the neoliberal international education policy. And when we discuss Chinese international students' political identity, it's often homogenized by the narratives. And based on these narratives and discourses, that Chinese students' ability in social, culture, and political contribution are often overlooked in the higher education settings. So it leading to us to think about why we need to study and engaging with this topic to learn political participation with Chinese international students. One of the rationale is based on my personal positionality as a Chinese student in Canada and attending the post-secondary education and like kind of witnessing all the policy changes and crisis happening in the university space. And also by following, like engaging with this research topic, it can help us to understand student experience that beyond academic learning and using that political participation as a scope to resist and challenging the stereotypical and deficit narrative on Chinese international students. So by like introducing my research finding, I have conducting this research with 7 Chinese international students who studied in 2 universities in Quebec, Canada. And I will introducing my findings by leading each research question that I propose. So in the first part, we will kind of emphasizing and looking into what are Chinese international students' perception and attitudes towards political participation. So in the interview, many participants shared their own experience or observation, what like political activities that they engaged or witnessed with while they study in Canada. And it shows that political participation has more than one way. As you can see, here's a brief chart to like categorizing the political participation through the interview reflections that they including advocacy, communicating personal opinions in political and social issues, election and election campaigns, protests, demonstration, and following the news. So from these like specific activities, we can see that for Chinese students, the political participation can taking in place in both individual actions or joining these activities as a collective. And the online platforms are very useful tool and strategy for Chinese students to engaging in political participation, as their reflection showed that once they engage or talking about political participation, it always associate with social or community-based issues or needs. And this the social and community is including both Chinese, Canadian, and international context. So when we're thinking about how this diverse form of about political participation. What are the factors influencing students having these perceptions or making choice of their political participation? So there are three main factors, which are nationality, international mobility, and immigration status. So although this study has a very small population size with participants, but in the analysis, we can still see that the students have two preferences towards engaging in political participation or political activities. And these three factors also can be represented when students talking about their understanding of China or Canada's social political context. For example, as you can see here are some reflections from participant 2. Based on her comparison between Canada, US, and China's political environment, it kind of encouraged her to engage in more political activities while she studied in Canada. However, for participant 1, since these ideas, protest, strike, or demonstration, cannot be migrate to the Chinese context, and she kind of thinking about, oh, I'm actively not engaging in these activities. However, these factors are not separate or standing alone. They often intersect with each other, and these intersections also influence participants' preferences and motivations towards political engagement. For example, you can see also participant 1 who are currently actively choosing not engaging in the political activities. However, once she implies if the immigration status change in the future, it can be giving her different social responsibilities and different political responsibilities within the context she settled in. So within we understanding about the factors and students' perception of political participation, what are the university's role plays in this to impact Chinese international students to understand and exercise political participation? So the first implication is from the course experience. So in these 7 participants, many of them are attending the programs within social science and humanity disciplines, but some of them are attending the programs outside of disciplines, but most of them are articulating that the context of course in social science and humanities can help them to gain civic literacy, which help them to understand political participation, since they often address human rights issues, promoting democratic practice, gender equality, and resisting discrimination in the specific social context. And here is an example from participant 2 who are learning the feminist movements in Canada, which helped her to apply this course content into her real life practice. And other than the course content, the instructors also plays a very important role for students to shaping their view of political participation or the skills that they need. So from the students' reflection, if the instructors are actively facilitating active discussion and the classroom communication, it can creating an open space during the lecture time. And during this discussion, students are practicing or improving their skills to express their political opinions and values to others in the classroom setting, which will transferring to the settings outside the classroom. So after that, from the course experience, also the interaction with university communities is important factors that helped students in political participation. The first aspect is the positive supportive and positive attitude from the faculty members, which can boost Chinese international students' interest and motivations to engage in political activities. Here's some examples. For example, participant 2 who attended multiple student strikes that facilitated by the student organization. And within her reflection, it is not only students' organizations' efforts, but faculty members are also actively supporting the students in organizing these strikes. And then the participant 1 shared that the instructors expressed the positive attitudes towards her political engagement that outside the campus, leading them to actively participate in the movements and working towards to change current social conditions. And the interactions can also represent as like accessing the political engagement opportunities through student groups and faculty members. And since these interviews are taking place in summer 2024, many students in the interviews shared their observation or participation in student and staff strike within their university, or the observations of the protests and demonstration that are happening on campus, such as the pro-Palestinian protests that are happening in the both campuses. And so, so this can see that student organizations also plays a very like active role to like helping international students, so gaining the information about what is the political participation happened in the host society and what the social issues can international student address by attending these political activities. Since we talk about a lot of like positive implications that the participants has experienced, but there also have some mixed signals that students received from their universities surrounding students' political participation, especially the on-campus engagement. Like within these interviews, many students are like kind of having like signaling one message, that university is formed by different communities or groups, such as student groups, faculty groups, and the administration groups, like represents administrators and leaderships. So within this on-campus engagement, these university communities sometimes do not have a united decision on students' engagement opportunities. And for participant 7, who also attending student strike, however, receiving the kind of negative attitude from the instructors, since the instructors still was holding the class around this time. And according to the participant, that is not like positive experience for her to kind of like to learn what student strike means in the Canadian university setting. The other aspect is the contradictory values and attitudes from different communities in university in relation to political activities. As I said, the students kind of emphasizing universities are formed by different groups. And when we're thinking about university as an academic or administrative institution, and the leadership kind of represents who are more focusing on maintaining its current structures and operations. So therefore, the leadership all kind of showing the conservative attitudes towards students to initiating on-campus political engagement. And you can see here's a reflection from participant 2. And within the student position, students are conflict with the administrators when they initiating the student engagement. As the administrators, they want students to cause less trouble, to impact universities' reputations, and do not get like do not let students' political participation to influence universities' fundings or sour the relationship between university and their donors or sponsors. So here is some like key findings from my research, and I want to highlight some key takeaway from this project. So from this project, it's kind of expanding our understanding of university's role in international students' political experience, and kind of emphasize that Chinese international students do not have a homogeneous experience in political participation, which leading us to think how can we further challenging this problematic narrative on international students as bystanders or apolitical groups, since many students, although they are not participating in protest or demonstration, but they are actively making these decisions for not participating. And also, I think this project allows us to kind of starting to critically reflect what is the university's role in international students' political life. Are our universities are prioritizing their institutional interest first, or are they prioritizing international students' voice or development needs? So here's my presentation for today. Thank you for your listening, and I look forward for the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That was a wonderful presentation. And we'll move on to our second presenter, Tatiana. Please take it away.
Okay. Is it all good? Yeah. Slideshow.
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to present some of my PhD findings. And today I'll be talking about the impact of international mobility on Russian young people's aspirations to engage sociopolitically in Russia. So in contrast to the previous presentation, the focus will be on political involvement or civic involvement in Russia, yeah, as opposed to political participation in the host country. So this doctoral study was completed at the University of Surrey last year, and before just jumping on to the findings, I'll outline the research project itself, and then we'll talk about the sociopolitical participation aspirations. Okay. Okay. So the aim of my thesis was to explore the impact of international mobility to democratic countries on Russian young people's sociopolitical views and engagement. And I had three main research questions that you can see here. So the first was about motivations to study abroad, just to set the stage for the further investigation. The second one focused on the sociopolitical views and the change in such views as a result of exposure to the more democratic host society. And the third research question was investigated the impact of study abroad on the intentions to engage sociopolitically on return to Russia. I conducted 55 semi-structured interviews. Most of the participants were females, and most were majoring in non-STEM subjects such as economics, education, management, and the majority were sponsored by the Russian government or by the host country government, and the destination countries were the UK and the States. So also I had two categories of participants in release. So those who were enrolled or just graduated from the British or American university, and those who returned to Russia. So the distribution of the sample we can see here in the table. So the core chapters that I had in my thesis, there were three: so the cosmopolitan traits, the sociopolitical views, and then the aspirations to engage sociopolitically. And today I'll be talking about the third one here. So we'll talk about political participation, civic social initiatives, and the perceptions and barriers that the participants discussed in their narratives. Theoretically, my study builds on the key assumptions of the soft power narrative and the migration development nexus theory. And the key presumptions of these perspectives are that the cultural and political values of the host country will be attractive to the foreign students coming from less liberal countries, that the exposure to the more democratic society will result in a certain political socialization abroad, and foreign students will absorb democratic values and will be exposed to democratic practices in the host nation. Also, very widespread, very common are assumptions about the transformative nature of international mobility experience, not only in terms of the academic achievements, but also about the so-called democratizing influence on the foreign students, so that they acquire skills, knowledge, and certain experience in civic initiatives or political participation, and then they transfer these practices or somehow disseminate their knowledge about the democratic norms in their home country. Building on that, student migrants or just migrants in wider migration literature are seen as agents of systemic change. Thereby they engage in different civic reforms or contribute to political development. And such studies, often quantitative and built on samples which evolve around civic or political activists. So they link the student migration, mobility to the political development of the origin country. So before discussing the socio-political engagement of the Russian young people that I interviewed, so the question is, are these people actually, are these participants in favor of democratic norms and practices? And the answer is yes. So my participants, they endorse democratic values and democratic rule in general. But at the same time, my research showed a variety of migration impacts, and sometimes they were quite controversial and not necessarily democratizing in the strict sense. As you can see here, so there was evidence about increased political awareness, socio-political awareness, but at the same time, such political learning was very uneven. Sometimes it was very modest, sometimes more comprehensive. Then study abroad experience helped develop some liberal values, some liberal views on sexual minorities, but at the same time, for others, although minority, the exposure to the more liberal society led to more hostile attitudes to LGBT community. And despite the appreciation of the democratic practices and values, and the study abroad experience itself, which helped shape the notions of democracy for some participants, there was also quite widespread skepticism towards democracy as a political system. So now, just after briefly and quite selectively describing the findings on the socio-political views, I will talk in more detail about the impact of international mobility on the socio-political engagement. So the first theme that emerged across many narratives was the risky and dangerous political environment in Russia, and that was an obstacle to engage in Russia. So as you can see in these two quotes, in these two abstracts, the participants were afraid of getting involved politically in Russia, and even though they witnessed some democratic practices abroad, they were fully aware of the dangers and the risks that political involvement in Russia posed for them. At the same time, there was also this lack of external efficacy and a national mindset, which refers to the description of the Russian people as quite passive. And probably these two themes, they're quite co-constitutive, but these two reasons not to engage in Russia, they were very, very common across the sample. At the same time, there was some psychological engagement with politics, and usually respondents were interested in Russian politics and Russian sociopolitical developments rather than their host country. But at the same time, they were focused on their private life, on their studies, on their career, and definitely political engagement in Russia was not their priority. Was there any impact at all to engage sociopolitical in Russia? Yes, there was, but it was very, very marginal. So only a handful of participants felt inspired to engage politically. But at the same time, I cannot say that these effects were decisive. So these participants, they had some pre-migration political socialization. For example, their parents were quite critical of the Russian authorities, or they had participated already in some political events in Russia. And at the same time, these respondents were inclined to stay abroad rather than return in Russia and contribute to some political change. So now, social and civic engagement. Here we can see the effects of study abroad a bit more clearly. About a third of the sample acknowledged that exposure to the democratic host country had an effect on their aspirations to engage socially or in some civic initiatives. And such initiatives usually included recycling, education, or volunteering. And they were always small scale, feasible, and non-confrontational. So the purpose was not to confront the authorities, but do something that was feasible, for example, to introduce some reforms in the higher education institution, or to not to buy plastic bags when shopping, something like this. Again, the effects of study abroad were not absolute, because these participants seemed quite civic-minded already. Some of them had participated in different projects, civic projects, even before study abroad experience. Also, whether these civic-minded respondents will be able to make and to bring about change in Russia at some point in the future seemed questionable, at least at the moment of the interview, because many were willing to stay abroad to continue their international career, or they were focused on their studies, and civic involvement, civic engagement was not a priority for them, as you can see here in the abstract from one of the participants. Also, one of the interesting themes that emerged was the dynamics of sociopolitical participation. Specifically, this refers to the participants who used to be politically active in Russia, but even after their studies abroad in the UK or in the States, they didn't feel inspired to re-engage again after coming back to Russia. Because as you can see here in Alexei's abstract quote, he's saying that I already had some experience in Russia. Everyone had very, very big problems after that, so I'm not going to engage anymore. Also, a few participants participated in different initiatives abroad. These were, for example, some protests against the pension system at that point, or that was the bio-organic garden, when students volunteered to plant something in an organic garden. But at the same time, these young people were not willing to transfer these practices in Russia, because they felt that the environments are very different and such initiatives will not be appreciated, or they will be just risky. And finally, democratic norms diffusion, which refers to democratic spillovers when participants, for example, would talk about democratic practices that they witnessed abroad, possibly with their friends or relatives. And the evidence showed that communication mainly focused on everyday life abroad rather than politics. So they were more interested in their learning experience, or if something politically significant happened, such as Brexit, for example, they were interested in their immigration status rather than political involvement. So there is mixed evidence about Russian young people's social remittances, because on the one hand, they were focused on the everyday life. On the other hand, of course, they talked about some advantages of living in the West, more career opportunities, for example, more opportunities for self-development, or just to give an example, like the quality of roads in the States. And some topics, especially those which are relevant to the democratic norms diffusion, they were very sensitive, as participants acknowledged. For example, when these young people were trying to critique Russia, not out of their negative attitudes to their home country, but just because they were caring individuals and they really cared about Russia's future. They said that their relatives, their friends didn't take this critique well, so they didn't want to hear anything critical about their homeland, and especially such topic as attitudes to sexual minorities was very undesirable. So participants didn't try to influence their friends or relatives' view on these topics, and which in general tells us about some obstacles in the cross-border transferability of the socio-political norms and behaviors. So it's not just about the priorities, but also about the topics that may or may not be raised with the family or friends. And to conclude, so the contribution of the study consists in the knowledge that it extends knowledge about the international student mobility from Russia, because the studies are quite scarce, and it gives us some idea of what the motivations are to study abroad, as well as the impact of mobility on such on such young people. So then, to my best knowledge, that's the first in-depth analysis of the impact of study abroad on Russian mobile students' socio-political beliefs and behaviors. And importantly, in relation to the theoretical assumptions, it challenges the deterministic association of foreign students' political socialization in a democratic host country with their political agency and systemic macro changes. So this association is quite common in the studies where foreign students are presented as political actors, as young people who are able to bring about change in their home countries. But my study proves the opposite. And also it shows that the sending country characteristics are very important in studying the transfers of democratic norms and behaviors. And interestingly, this variable is often missing from studies, from especially quantitative studies of democratic diffusion. Usually this is the destination country political development or characteristics which is taken into account, but not the sending country political landscape. And finally, it just demonstrates a variety of sociopolitical outcomes of student mobility, not only the democratizing influence of exposure to the host country, but also some like I said in the beginning, for example, some more hostile attitudes to sexual minorities or skepticism about democracy as a political system, and uneven political knowledge gained whilst abroad. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. That was great. I have a lot of questions, and then we can discuss in the Q&A. Yeah, so our third presenter, last but not least, Zhuo Wang, please take it away.
Yes, wait for a minute. I will share my screen now. Okay. Could you see my screen clearly? Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zhuo Wang, and a PhD researcher and also a content creator on Chinese social media. My presentation today is titled Effective Mobilization and Rational Solidarity and Autoethnography of a Chinese Student Influencer Digital Practice. I study how international students build solidarity through everyday emotional storytelling, especially when political speech is risky on Chinese social media. Let me start with the context. So this conference asks us to navigate poly-crisis. I think for international students, poly-crisis is not an abstract concept. It is lived daily. For example, the geopolitical tensions reshape our mobility. The visas maybe suspend, and the security increases. And also the anti-immigration rhetoric dehumanizes us and telling us we don't belong to these places. And also academic and the visa precarity wears us down. The constant fear of visa deny and the pressure to perform. Yeah. And finally, the free speech shrinks. It's just like our panel's topic today. The students may do the self-censor and avoid campus forms and even change research topics out of fear. I think two of my colleagues, mentioned that before. The students are really fear to speak out their political things and even don't want to share their political ideas sometimes. When they study abroad. Okay, maybe these four crises do not operate separately. They intersect and amplify each other. Let me just give you a very simple and concrete examples from my US international students friends. A Chinese student in the USA might wake up to news of visa restrictions from the home office in USA, and then go to a seminar where a classmate make a cultural anti-China remark, and then receive a supervisor's email about a missed deadline, and then scroll through the social media and seeing friends back home, back China, and being silenced. These are not separate problems. I think they hit you at the same time. It is polycrisis. And in this context, what does activism look like? That is my question. I take to this slide 3. Yes. This panel is about activism and free speech, but what happens when free speech itself is risky? When speaking out can get your visa revoked, your social media screened, your academic future put at risk. What does activism look like when political speech is risky itself? Okay, so on the left, we have traditional activism. I think my two colleagues just talk about before. Yes, the protests, the slogan, and the public speech. But for many international students, that's not an option without real and very good consequences, right? They maybe go to the prison later. On the right, we have silence, withdrawal, self-censorship, avoiding campus forms. But absence of protest is not acceptance of operation, as James Scott reminds us. So where does that leave us? My research points to a third space between silence and protest, a space of effective mobilization through everyday digital practices. This is what I study, and how sharing vulnerability, hope, fear, and cultural negotiation and other like emotions on social media becomes a quiet but powerful form of international students' agency. This is not not loud, but it is real. Like James Scott studied Malaysian peasants, the farmers, they couldn't protest openly. Yeah, so they dragged their feet and pretend to comply and gossiped. But international students today are not the farmers, right? But the logic is the same, similar. When direct opposition is too dangerous, agency finds other channels. So my question is, what are those channels in the digital age, in the modern age, on platforms like Chinese social media platform, for example, Red Note, TikTok? Yes. And recent research shows that international students agency often take subtle, situated forms of action. This is exactly what I will show you today. Okay, so how do I study this? I use critical autoethnography. It is not a personal diary, but a kind of systematic analysis of my own experience within the social and political structures on Chinese social media platforms. I think I hold a dual position. On one hand, I am PhD researcher trained to analyze international students' mobility and agency. On the other hand, I am a content creator on Chinese social media platform Red Note Xiaohongshu, where I narrate my own transnational life from visa anxiety to cultural adaptation to moments of hope and happiness when I study abroad. I think this insider and outsider vantage point is not a bias to eliminate. It is a kind of analytical resource because my life experience becomes data when I do this research. And at the same time, I use emotional reflectivity informed by Holmes 2010. Yeah, she's a professor at University of Edinburgh, I think. Yeah, to set a step back and critically examine my own practice. Let me give you an example. When I posted my my story and my one post, I initially felt very embarrassed, like I was oversharing my life. But then I asked myself, why does sharing vulnerability feel shameful on social media? Because academia often values toughness, this kind of characteristics, but not, vulnerability, right? That realization helped me see that my own discomfort was already a product of the very structures I am studying. Here are some screenshots from my account, my research field. Okay, let me show you one example. It's one post from my own account. I wrote this post after spending 5 hours alone in a UK hospital emergency room because I feel very tired and my heart feels very uncomfortable at that time. And I think I should go. I thought I should go to the hospital at very quickly. Yeah. So at that time, I was very scared. I was in pain and I had no one with me. I just spent a long time in the hospital. Even the UK government provides us the student insurance. Yeah, we can have the free treating when we go to hospital. But you know, the time is very long. It takes more than 6 hours to wait for one doctor to check your maybe check your chest. Yeah. The PhD life abroad can feel incredibly isolating in the moments like this. I think the post wasn't political. It was not protest. It just said, it is hard. I'm alone. I'm scared. What happened next was very interesting. Yeah, and it shocked me as a researcher. The comments didn't argue me. They didn't debate. They just resonated. Let me read two actual comments to you. Yeah, maybe not read, but you can like see some of the keywords. Like the first one said hug, and someone said sisters, and someone said fighting baby, and there is an emoji about hug on the left. And she talked about her experience in the emergency room in the UK when she studied abroad. And some netizens even give me some suggestions. Like she said, you can do the hot pot at home and buy some, go to the Chinese supermarket to buy some hot pot materials and do that. It will be a very simple happiness. Yeah. And the other girl said that you are not alone. Me and my PhD supervisor also study all the time. Yeah. And you are not alone. You are not the only one. Something like this. So I think they are not agreeing with a political statement. They are just recognizing a shared emotional state. And that recognition, you are not broken, you are human, you are not alone, is the seed of solidarity. The strangers become the temporary companions at that time in this space, in my social media space. This is effective mobilization, not through a slogan, but through a shared vulnerability. Each comment is a very small act of emotional labor, and together they create a space of rational solidarity. Yeah, for international students navigating poly crisis, this kind of digital emotion spaces becomes a lifeline. I don't think it's a solution to the poly crisis, but it's a way to survive it together. We can survive under this poly crisis because of this kind of digital practice and this kind of shared hope together. Okay. Yes, next. So how does a vulnerable post actually produce the solidarity? Let me walk you through the theoretical mechanism, drawing on emotional geography. First, it is the affective labor, or we should say emotional labor. As a content creator, I don't just vent. I don't just shout out my own emotion. I strategically choose what to share, like the fear, loneliness, resilience, for an imagined audience. That is a deliberate like emotional work. Second, the affective speciality. The whole 2024 argues that emotional labor, whether in real life or in digital life, is the constitutive of temporality, sociality, and spatiality. Let me unpack each with examples from my emergency room post. The temporality, the post creates a shared now. Yes, the shared now, the moment. When I post at 9 p.m. after returning from the emergency room, after waiting 5 hours, everyone who commented in the next few hours was in that same midnight emotional space, even if they were in different time zones and different cities. Yes. And the second is sociality. The strangers become temporary companions, just like I mentioned before. And you can see this comment. You can see this comment section. I just want to read one maybe because that's Chinese, and they continually say hack, and the blogger, you are very strong and you are very tough. You don't feel so lonely. And even the other one said that 5 hours waiting is better because I usually wait for 8 hours in UK's hospital. That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. I think this is not friendship because we don't know each other. We are stranger. It's a situational care. And that is enough for me at that moment, at that night. Okay. The third point is speciality. A post becomes a place. My emergency room post is not a hospital, right? But for those few days, the comment section felt safer than my own house. That is a digital place of belonging. Okay. Third, it's the affective resonance. It shows that emotions circulate and amplify. Each comment echoes this kind of feeling. Even digital bodies echo together around shared experience. Yes. The outcome is rational solidarity. I think it's not the solidarity of the political manifesto, but the solidarity of I see you, you see me. We are carrying something similar. Yeah. This solidarity is rational. It's very easy to be broken, but it's real at that moment. Yes. So now let me bring this back to the conference theme, maybe navigating polycrisis. My conceptual framework suggests that effective mobilization helps students navigate each of the four crises, not by solving them. Solving is not possible, I think, just because it's very complicated, right? But by surviving them together. Yes, we survive and we hug each other. The geopolitical tensions, when you cannot take a political stance without risk, you red note feed, a red note homepage becomes a transnational peer space and beyond the binary of pro-China or pro-West or Chineseness, blah blah blah. You are simply a student like me and like all the other international students. Yes, in anti-immigration rhetoric, when public discourse tells you that you don't belong, you see a comment saying that I see you, I've been there. It becomes a small act of the recognition and dignity. Yes. In academic and visa precarity, the shared stories of crying in the library or maybe waiting for the visa decisions and surviving a hospital visit alone, these are emotional first aid on social media. Yes, by the other international students together. The fourth is the shrinking free speech, just like the panel title. This is the most delicate one. I think effective mobilization allows students to express something real, like the frustration, fear, hope, without making, very clear political claims that could put their visas maybe at risk, or maybe they will be in trouble, right, if they just say a lot of political things and do the campaigns maybe. This is a third space between silence and protest. And one comment simply said that I cannot say anything else. Thank you so much. Okay. So what is effective mobilization in the end? I think it is not a grand, political movement. It is a survival strategy. It transforms isolation into belonging, and it transforms silence into resonant care. And it also transforms the precarity into the collective emotion, the collective endurance. And that, I argue, it is a legitimate way of navigating polycrisis without succumbing to despair. Yeah. let me just conclude with 3 contributions to this panel on activism and free speech. First, expand activism. I think most studies focus on protest and organized movement and maybe on campus, not digital thing, right? But when those are too risky, I think emotional storytelling becomes a form of mobilization. It challenges the binary of protest and silence. Second, I think it reframes the free speech. We tend to think of free speech as present or absent, but international students live in a very gray zone. Yeah, my research identifies a third space, the affective expression. You can say I'm scared without saying I opposite this policy. I don't agree this policy, right? This is not for free speech, but it is not silence either. Third, centering rational solidarity. Solidarity is often understood as a political alliance, but I found it's a different kind of solidarity built not on shared political beliefs, but on shared emotional experience. Very simple. Yeah. A comment saying I've been there too just creates this kind of emotional bonds. And hundreds of those bonds create a community. Maybe not hundreds, just 10, more than 10. It's fine, yeah? This directly respond to a very new systematic review published in 2025. Yes, they note that research on international student activism often misses collective mobilization in everyday forms. My study shows that rational solidarity built through affective resonance in common sections, maybe, yes, is that missing piece, yes. It is collective, it is mobilizing, and it does not look like a protest. Okay, in short, effective mobilization is not a substitute of for political activism, but it is real. It is an impactful way that international students navigate polycrisis. They building belonging, building care, and the resilience, where the political speech is risky on social media, maybe, or not only the social media, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me just end with a final thought. This conference asks us to navigate polycrisis without succumbing to despair. My research suggests one answer: effective mobilization, the quiet, everyday practice of shared vulnerability, or maybe shared other kind of feelings, offering recognition and building rational solidarity in digital spaces. We may not be able to shout out. We may not have full free speech, but we can still say, I see you. You are not alone. We have the same feeling and we are together. And sometimes that is enough to keep going. So I leave you maybe with a very open questions. How might we recognize activism that does not look like activism? Thank you so much. And I look forward to your questions. Okay. Some references. Yes. I will stop share now.
Thank you very much, Zhuo. That was such an intriguing presentation. And yeah, now we're just open up for questions. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question.